I would like to introduce Mr. Henric von Scheel. Henric is the originator of Industry 4.0. And today, Henric's going to join us and he's going to talk about the next era of operational excellence in manufacturing. Henric, welcome.
Actually speak today, and my key topic I selected for you today is next generation of operational excellence. And the main topic is why I'm so passionate about it. I'm not sure if you saw it today, but today they announced the manufacturers, they announced the top 20 influencers in manufacturing, and I'm honored to be one of them. And one of the key themes I have in manufacturing is actually the next operational excellence. So what I want to go through with you today a little bit, I want to go through today, what is the Industry 4.0? What does it mean for you in manufacturing? What does it mean for you personally? And how does that relate to Creatio? Because I think that's quite a key topic, how we can manage that with operational excellence. And with that, let me kick off with a little bit about myself. My name is Henric von Scheel. I have a bit of an accent, as you can hear. I'm from Denmark. Hence, I'm a very direct person, but I think you will survive that. I'm best known as the originator of the Industry 4.0 and digitalization in the German themes. But if I'm really honest to you, my core expertise is strategy. And an outcome of that is discovering the Industry 4.0 and the digitalization. So when you're good to strategy, you know you also come out with a different theme. So let me start with that, right? Let's go back to where the Industry 4.0 originated from. Henning Kagermann and Professor Scheer, two big guys. One is from SAP, the other one is ID Share. We were doing the strategy for Germany. It's right in 2008 after the crisis. And normally in a crisis, in order to get growth, you have to increase the productivity level. And to focus on productivity level, we called all the industry leaders together. And we looked at the trends and how they're colliding together. And what we realized there was something quite unique. We realized the internet, mobile, social media, big data, all collided into one. Right? When you look at your phone, at that time, your phone was not one piece, it was separated. And these things were merging. And that's where we announced the digital agenda. All the European countries adapted it. And that is the theme you call today on digitalization. The first one to adapt it is manufacturing. They were the first one to jump on the wagon, but they're also the most challenging ones to adopt it, right? So today, when you look at the maturity on digitalizations, I think more industries have adapted faster digitalization than manufacturing by itself. And one of the reasons is that they actually scared the hell out of it when they realized that they have to map processes, they have to do all of this. So it seems to them like an ERP system. They have to start all over and they see the prices and it comes way up. So that's why I have a case story for you on how you can start with your digitalization project yourself. That's part of the Industry 4.0. Out of that came then the Industry 4.0. A half year later, we were sitting and drinking, and we realized it's even worse than what we thought. It's not 5 trends merging. We realized it's 77 trends merging. And they're merging over a longer period of time. And when trends merge together, they create a paradigm shift. And when paradigm shifts merge together, they create fundamental changes across industries, how supply chain works, everything. So that is what we announced to be the Industry 4.0. So at core, what the Industry 4.0 is, if you go home today and want to explain your wife what Industry 4.0 is, Industry 4.0 is the colliding of 3 worlds together: digital world, physical world, and the virtual world. Look at your phone. It's digital because you can connect with everything around you. It's virtual because I can go and join the Zoom call, and it's physical because it's a physical device. I can scan the wall. This is the core element of what the Industry 4.0 is. The centerpiece of this is the human being. Our ability to adapt resides within the human being. Around that are 77 trends, and they are merging in 4 distinct waves that are bringing the biggest disruption ever We have never seen such a big change in such a short period of time in humanity's history. So these trends, the red ones you see over there are technology trends. And we are, as human beings, we're a little bit obsessed with technology, but they're only one. We have the regulatory trends, the workforce trends, environment trends, consumer trends, economic trends, demographics trends. All of them come together in a huge element to it, right? So this is actually a good opportunity. Take this, what I highlighted for you down there, actually the strategic intents, how you can apply it. What I want to discuss with you, how you can actually apply it simply. But let's first go to the next step. The Industry 4.0 emerges in 4 distinct phases. I'm not going to go through all of them. That's going to be a whole session for itself, right? But for you to realize that there are four phases, and we're actually in the second phase, and we're moving into the third phase, right? So good. What's interesting for you is that manufacturing in itself is actually in the cyber physical system. So when the physical and the digital world collide, you become into a cyber physical system. And I have an example of that, right? When the digital and the virtual world connects, you are going into the metaverse. And when all three collides, you're going into the multiverse. They're supported by different technology sets. And one of the most exciting ones we will talk about is actually smart automation. So what does that mean? Will we all go around with virtual and be like Facebook to go into the metaverse? No. How Facebook illustrates the metaverse is actually not how the metaverse is. So when I told Steve Jobs in 2011 about the metaverse, he totally jumped on it from Apple. I told Facebook, they also totally jumped on it, but they take very different perspective to it, right? The metaverse is not you sitting in a goggle and with all your social friends. It's something very, very different, right? Metaverse will have a huge effect on manufacturing. Multiverse also, how you work in your supply chain, how you work in your research and development. And so it has a huge element on your operational elements, how you work on this. That is something I will cover, not today, but in a different session, but this has a profound element to it. The big manufacturing, like Mercedes, BMW, they are already working on this because they realized the huge potential within it. So if you look at Industry 4.0 and you want to have it on one picture, give me the quick and dirty. This would be the one for manufacturing, right? Where you see it has actually an effect from end to end flow on wherever you apply it. The Industry 4.0 is always purpose-driven applied on how you want to apply it towards something. So it doesn't matter if you go for record management or parts management or clearance and settling, or you go to the supply chain and vice versa, right? So each of these technology sets that are there in this will have a profound effect on it, right? So I'm working with several manufacturers on several models, right? DeFi model, the decentralized model, has a huge element on warehouse and shipment and sending. And new financial models are coming in because the DeFi model is maturing, right? Meaning that for manufacturing, taking the whole cash flow out of their normally warehouse management, which they have, right? Very interesting models that are emerging. So what does that mean for you? Well, for you, it means we're living through the biggest time of disruption. You will probably change your work a couple of times. You need to adapt to several skills. And the Industry 4.0 effect will have a profound effect on our economy, how we work, how we interact, how we buy, how we consume, how the industry boundaries are set. But all of this actually really doesn't make me so much afraid, because all of this we can handle, because the core element of the Industry 4.0 is the human being, and our ability resides within to adapt to changes. And so investing in people is investing in the ability to adapt. So here is where I'm going to stop up a little bit and going to go into something very different than I normally do in manufacturing, but I think you'll be interested in that. So the core of strategy if you want to put it in one sentence, is defining a choice of what not to do, where to differentiate, and what to focus on. What not to do, you can only see when you realize what you are consisting of. Every company consists of competencies. A competence is what a company competes on. The subset of a competence is a capability. Many capabilities create a competence. Many capabilities consist of skills where you educate people that apply towards something that becomes a capability. If a company needs to adapt to something, they can only adapt at capabilities, never at the competencies. That was a secret ingredient I just gave you there. Why I'm saying that? Because the element on how you adapt to your surrounding depends on these three elements: what not to do, where to differentiate, and what to focus on. So what not to do is often when you realize what you can do, what you want to do, and what you should do. These three elements always highlight on what you should focus on. Then the next element is actually what to differentiate on. If you're in manufacturing, you have three layers you can focus on. You don't have core differentiating, and you don't have core competitive. Most manufacturers don't. Very rarely they do. Not even Mercedes and BMW have that, right? You have to be very, very unique to really do that, right? Then you're in the hyper-competitive areas. In the hyper-competitive areas, you only have three elements you can compete on: dynamic competitiveness, right? And hyper-competitiveness. That's quality and price, or how fast you are at this. This is why we today talk about operational excellence. This is why I'm so excited to be part of this with Creatio, because both of this will enable hyper-competitiveness and competitiveness dynamics. Let me show you how. So if you want to apply that, I will use an example in digital roadmap. So most of you are probably on a digital journey, or you're starting on something. So if you haven't started on something on a digital journey, you need to start on it really quick. So digitalization is not rocket science, but you need to be on the journey, and you need to be on it fast. And let me show you how. So this looks complex. It's actually really simple. This is the normal view you take of a company. You have a value chain. That's where you apply the forces and drivers. That's the trends. You have a business model. That's where you take the decisions on service flow, workflows, process flow, all of this, right? You probably normally have two business models, right? Because the business model is strategic, tactical, operational, where you link your service flows, process flows, all of this, right? Then you have your operating model. That's where it hits the rubber, right? Within that element, you have the full-blown version on how an organization works. So this, what you see here, is nothing else than what you see here in the value chain. It's the core, non-core, how you deliver, how you supply, right? This is discrete manufacturing, and you can easily see what are the potential that you have within each of these elements if you actually focus on digitalization. And you can see that's quite radical cost savings you can get out of that. Additional revenue, cost savings, that's quite radical, right? Every company executive would buy into that, right? So let's see how we would do that, right? First, you learned today that Industry 4.0 is always impact driven, right? So you have to decide, why are you doing digitalization? For which purpose are you doing it? What is the outcome you want to drive with that? Is it quality management? Is it better customer information? Is it the feedback loop? Is it for the research and development? Is it the system integration? Where is it you want to apply it? Is it in warehouse management? Where is it the purpose driven you want to do with it, right? So step number one, digital connectivity and sensoring. This is not very expensive, right? That normally costs you around 15 to 20K. This is where you as an organization do most of the mapping yourself. This is where you have to be aware. Don't use your process mapping. Use your workflows. If you don't know what the workflows is, I will show you later on what a workflow is. What is the difference between a service flow, process flow, and a workflow? Huge difference, because the biggest changes is that we need to work in workflows, because workflows create smart automation. Because when we work in processes is systems, and they are siloed by design. Everything that is between a machine and a software and goes to a human is a workflow. Everywhere where the chain always jumps off is a workflow. Everything that is delivered, the outcome of a service, is a service, right? A service is delivered to something. So connectivity and sensoring is really easy. Buy RFD devices, do your process mapping, don't do them, focus on your workflows, right? And within your workflows, see where do you need to connect sensors and where do you need to have the workflow enabled. By doing that, straightforward, you can enable the first step. Second step would be a little bit more difficult. Digital engineering, right? If this is the sandwich flipper, if this is the robot, if this is in the production line, you have it, right? Anywhere within that element, you have to be customer centric, and you have to focus on how does it map the workflows to my software, my robots, and all the engineering devices I have around, right? This is where you actually need to sit on the table, and this is where you probably need a partner in that is working already with workflows in terms of procurement, in terms of financing processes, or in other elements, because they already have these workflows. So this is the elements where you shouldn't reinvent the wheel, but try to leapfrog as much as possible and get some experts in there. This phase should not be very expensive, should cost you around 50 to 100K, right? Now comes the heavy stuff. That's the digital operations. This is where you unlock the value from the first two elements. This is where you connect it end to end in your shop floor and your execution system, in your operating management system. This is where it all comes together for you to work as one, where you can see the information flow end to end if required, or other parts, right? This is where you reap all the benefits. This is going to cost you far more, right? That's going to cost you about 250 to 800K. Why? This is where you connect the dots, where your SAP system or old legacy systems or old elements where you are not mature enough, right? Remember, a service flow has to go on end to end, and the maturity level has to be minimum 1 or 2. Anything that goes below that is where the chain falls off. If the maturity level is low, the maturity level is low in the whole chain, right? So that's the basic principles. When you have a workflow, the maturity level needs to be there in the whole chain. So that is one of the most exciting elements I have on digitalization. It's not rocket science. Don't overboil it. Focus on workflows and work as teams together, and then select a good partner that can help you on some of these best practices in workflows around. Now we come to the exciting part, the next generation of operational excellence that comes in, right? I told you before, most people are not aware of that there's a difference between a service and a process, right? And a process is what you do, and a service is what you deliver, right? And the simple way that you can explain it a little bit is that when you go to Starbucks and you order something, the guy puts it into the machine, it goes into the financial system and the order system and the procurement system and all of this, right? And then pops up at the screen behind that he needs to do number 21. And it doesn't matter how fast he pushes down the water and how fast he gives on the coffee to the next. That is the process, the owner, and the activity. You cannot increase the process. The process does not deliver the value. It's the service and the workflow. So the workflow is always there when there's a person there. Let me explain that differently. When you can look at the screen, right? If this is an activity and this is the input and this is the output, Everything we measure today is output driven. Everything we want to measure today is meanwhile the activity happens. Meanwhile, the activity happens is in the workflow and in the service flow. So that's also where the information flow is. Here you have data flow, right? So why is that important? You say, well, Henrik, that sounds a little bit theoretical. No, it's actually not. So when you do your digitalization project, if you use your processes, then your digitalization setup will be output driven. What you want in your digitalization project, you want it to be real-time driven. That means while the robot goes around, or when you go in the warehouse, to actually know where is this, right? The supplier standing outside, I need to deliver it. Where is it, right? Well, Fritz, he just placed it over there, right? Easy, right? That's called the huge difference between processes and services. The link between these two are workflows. So I'm giving you here a little bit secret for operational excellence, right? So normally when you see trends merging up, you have best practices, industry practices, and leading practices. Leading practice is 5%. Core differentiating, right? Then you have industry practice is competitiveness, where you compete head on head, right? Anything that a software provider does is either best practices or industry practices. So workflows are only in these two areas. Workflows can never be leading practices because, right? So why am I saying that? Because in principle, 80% of everything you need to do, which is non-core, is where you need to focus on to standardize, optimize, integrate, and align. That will bring you to lower the cost, increase the performance, and improve your operational excellence. To do this, it's really, really difficult, right? But that means you have to decide on everything, the nature of what everything is and what it is not, right? So, for example, everything which is non-core, the 80%, you can digitalize the hell out of it, right? But do you want to digitalize the hell out of it? No. Why? Because you will spend money all over, and you only want to spend money on where you can get the biggest impact out. So do you want to spend digitalization and workflow optimization on the industry practices? Yes, you do. Why? Because in industries, you compete head on head. That means you need to be minimum as good as your competitor. That means that the workflow will make a difference. The supply chain integration will make a difference. So all of this is small, but will make a difference for you. Warehouse management. So that's the innovation part. I'm not going to talk about that so much because that's more an executive portion. So this is the operational excellence, the next generation for that. So from now on, just think about you have 5 children. And these 5 children have different characteristics. And because they have different characteristics, you will treat them differently. So, for example, everything which is simple operations, like financing, right? If you ask financing, they're complex. But everybody of us knows financing is not rocket science, right? It's a simple operation, forecast, budgeting, right? Step by step. So the character of this, the driver, the need of this is standardization, optimization, transformation, and integration. Then you say, well, the driver for you in simple operations should always be cost cuttings. Then you go up to the next child, you have a complex child, right? Complex operations. Then you say, well, a complex operations would, for example, be warehouse management, right? Warehouse, you would see, well, that has a performance driver to it. So in that, I need to have a high level of alignment, integration, and workflow efficiency, right? Then you say, well, the next one would be a tactical operation, right? Then you say, what would be a tactical supply chain, for example, right? Oops. It has a performance need and a value governance. So the element I need for this is not cost cuttings. I need to drive performance and I need to get value out of it. So I need to monitor it and control it. I think you get the point of this, what I'm getting through. From now on, you have 5 children that you segment, and based on the attributes, you design on how you want to work on them, right? So let's look at how Creatio would work in this, right? So I mapped on what they're doing, and my biggest horse I'm always writing about. Finally, somebody talks about workflows. Workflows is smart automation. We need to move away from processes. It's not that processes are not important, but we have been doing it for the last 20 years. And now we need to focus on what is real important, which is the workflow or the service flow, right? So when you will look at, I just write corporate lifecycle, quotes, orders, and invoices will all be within simple operations. That's where you have the attribute. You need to have a workflow. You need to drive cost cuttings. So workflow is standardization, right? You need to have a best practice around it. You need to optimize it and integrate it, right? Customer support, warehouse management, and supply chain management, right? I would put that into a complex operation, right? You get my point? Production management, that is a unique operation, right? Because the outcome of that is a value driver. So you need the clear view on the workflows, smart automation to create efficiency and effectiveness. Efficiency and effectiveness is the mix between 2 elements, right? One is that you know exactly where your own expertise consists, you transform it, and then you add new to it, right? Transformation creates effectiveness. Innovation within that phase creates efficiency, right? That you can only do within a workflow, right? Then you have the marketing and promotion and risk and compliance. I would call that strategic operations, right? This is a cheat chart for you where you can see what is it you need to use in what manner, right? Have in mind what I said before. I'm just going back here. 80% of your operations needs to be standardized. And 15% you need to focus on workflows and smart flows. So all of this, you need to focus quite heavy to bring down the cost, increase the operational excellence, right? You see, in the industry element, the biggest portion of that is focused on service flows. Service flows is the subset of that is workflows. So as a takeaway for you, if you want to apply the Industry 4.0, it must be impact-driven approach. The secret sauce of that is the competencies. And if you want to drive the workforce, the digital roadmap, you have to base it on workflows. Remember the example I gave you here? Either it's output driven or you can measure it real time, right? So when you focus on real time, you can measure the activity meanwhile it happens. And that's where the value comes from the organizations, and that's what you can compete on in competitive dynamics. The other part is automation, productivity, and workflows. Goes between machine to machine and machine to human and machine to software. Very important. You just learned today, that's an easy way, the 80-15-5% rules, which is your rule to say, right, if we need to drive down the cost in the operational excellence, we need to do it on the 80%. If we need to focus on investing and innovating within manufacturing and wholesale, it's within the 15%. This is where you compete head on head. And a secret sauce I'm giving you is you can refine your leapfrog. See, the heritage of what you have versus new is not everything. All new wine is better than the old wine. So the workflows is often the link between these 2 elements. If I would be a manufacturer, I would maintain parts of the heritage system I have. But the link between this is no code where you focus on the workflow so you can have a simple integration to that. So this is the simple version and my takeaway I have for you guys. I hope it made a little bit sense. I am very much excited about the time we live in. I mentioned that to Jason when I talked to him before. I do believe we live in the greatest times of all. We are one of the most blessed generations of all. We have more freedom, we have more money in our hand, we have more opportunities in our life. We have the best century ever. And that also enables us as human beings to where we stand, to create better companies, better ways we work together. And so we're not just pulling ourselves down, but we can leverage ourselves up. So thank you very much. And over to Jason.
Thank you, Henric. And I think that there were so many great points in there. We got a ton of questions. We've got just 4 or 5 minutes here. I want to try to get to a couple of them that I think are very impactful. And the first one I want to bring to the table is, what tools does Industry 4.0 offer as far as customer experience management? And the question came from the perspective that this individual represents a company that does manufacturing, and it says CX is very important to us. What is your take of how customer experience is impacted by 4.0?
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, like, the Industry 4.0 is purpose-driven applied, right? So when it's customer experience, it can change it quite radically, right? So let's look at it. For example, I just ordered my Porsche Panamera Turbo S, right? And I got the news that it's 1 year delayed because of the chip, and I got the news 3 weeks ago that it's delayed again without an end date to it, right? So what is my customer experience with that, right? I've been driven Porsche actually nearly all my life, at least the last 20 years, right? What is my customer experience with that? It's actually not really good, right? So what changed with Porsche? Porsche gave me a personal call. Porsche gave me an experience. Porsche gave me an alternative offer that they came out with, right? But I know something else with Porsche too, right? So Porsche has been using the entire element without the supply, the manufacturing tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, tier 4, right? So when you know a little bit about Europe and the manufacturing, right, we have Germany, the big mother, and then we have tier 1, tier 2, tier 3. And if the mother breathes in and out, it takes everything, in a cycle of 3 years, it takes everything in and out, right? And with that, they are trying to renew the customer experience, right? And the customer experience is set on how well are the manufacturing funded. So, for example, when you look at Porsche, that example that I just gave, right? Each of the manufacturers have tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, and their costs are linked into when they get orders, they're paid after they deliver them, the manufacturing out, right? COVID has totally linked that in 1,000 pieces. So one simple thing I help Porsche with is to do this. Tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, tier 4, tier 5, right? The link for this is blockchain. That means the order comes out in the smart contract. It's the same order that comes out every 6 months. That order comes to the next one and to the next one. With that order, automatically comes the payment. The smaller the supplier is, the more difficult it is. What does Porsche require from that? They require direct order information, where the order is situated, in which phase of the entire element, right? So Porsche is really good with that. The one thing they have no control of is the chips, right? So is that changing customer experience? Well, if they had the chip, yes, it would, right? So some of the elements they don't have control over, right? So an integrated supply chain, an integrated end-to-end flow will change the entire setup that you can do, right? You can change the element on how customer experience you. And right, my experience with Porsche is good, right? Why? Because I'm a good client to it, but they have also used additional time on me to make sure that I'm happy. So
I think that's a good way to look at it. And I think Henric, we've got just 1 minute or so left here, and I want to try to answer a question that just came up, which is how does operational experience factor into this approach? And I think you mentioned that as you tie the supply chain end to end, and as you're able to feed information back up the value chain, right? Each of those stops, and I think you'd agree, each of those stops has a different experience throughout the supply chain. Understanding each one of those stops and how the information can impact it obviously can help you refine, and it can help you drive more efficiency in each one of those operational stops. So is there any other words that maybe you might have around operational experience and the use of data up the value chain?
Yeah, that's actually one element, right? The big manufacturers, I wouldn't call them manufacturers anymore because they're the big guys, right? The mid-market manufacturer have one additional problems, and that is not only information flow and data flow and all of this, right? It actually resides in that they are suffering from Peter's principle, right? Most of them have been promoted to incompetence because they're plant managers, and now they're suddenly coming up and they're responsible for IT, for strategy, for implementation, and all of this. And they're literally overloaded, right? Some of them just, they saw the previous guy being fired because the SAP implementation went wrong, right? These are serious things for them, right? That's their career going up. So they are challenged with how fast the competencies are moving because they're not IT guys, right? And that's my recommendation, is always there to find a good IT partner that can help you understand how you can apply most of the competencies yourself. So learn part of this yourself, and they are supporting you. So not the traditional consulting role where they come in and they do an analytical work for you, right? See, the reality is you don't have to define the processes. Everybody of us has the process. If SAP doesn't give you the process, just throw them out. Just another consultant will give the process free, right? The workflows, right? Get a good partner in workflows that can give you the workflows, the information flows, the key KPIs, and the measurement points, and design with them your own customized version. You don't have to do the big ripple, right? Use most of it yourself, right? We are beyond the normal SAP implementation where you need 6 to 8 months, right? You should be able to do a digitalization projects within 2 months. If you're not doing it within 2 months, either your project is too complex or you have a wrong partner. That's the truth of it.
No, I think that you're right on, and one of the things that we preach here at Creatio is the flexibility and how fast we can move and scale versus some of the legacy technologies. Professor von Scheel, I thank you very much for your time today. I know it's getting late over in Switzerland. We appreciate your time. We appreciate the insights. All of the feedback in the chat today has been wonderful. So thank you so very much to everybody, and thank you very much, Professor von Scheel.
Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.